Confidence and stability are the keys to making a complex move look easy. That's not a steer. I asked for a steer. Confidence and stability.
All right. I think that I've got all this working. I've never exactly done this before where I've already had an event set up and then I had to get the software to hook up to the event that I already had set up. But I think it's working now. It looks like I've got 40 people watching, and then hopefully I can see some people telling me that they are seeing this and stuff. Can anybody see this? We can hear and see you. All right, excellent. I'm glad to hear it. All right, now I'm just going to try to get my chat window someplace where I can see it definitely. Is there a way I can get it out? Pop out chat. Ooh, check that out. All right. Cool. All right, so I got my chat window. I've got my lighting mostly set. I'm just going to wiggle this camera a little bit. That's cool. Got the microphone. Will I actually end up building something this time? Well, that's a funny story. I think I might. Let's see here. So I've got a little bit of breakfast. I've got some coffee. And for those of you who watched the last video, you will be glad to know that I have some plague monks here that are actually, there's 10 of them that are done. So you got that. These guys are pretty cool. They're upside down, but yeah, there we go. So yeah, I'm building them with the the blades. I forget what they're called exactly, and the woe staffs. And then that way I get to attack with both when I'm playing stuff. So yeah, I've got 10 of them built out of the 20 that came in the box, and I'm going to be doing some more soon. But what I'm planning on working on today, between asking questions or answering questions, is this guy. This is the Vampire Counts White King, and I'm going to be, he just showed up from eBay actually a couple days ago, and he's going to become part of my kind of newer sort of sub-army, which is going to be a death army. So skeletons and all kinds of shenanigans like that. So anyway, yeah, I'm going to try to open him up without hurting myself. I just got into the hobby. I have Dark Elves. I have never played against Dark Elves. I don't think I know anybody who plays them. I mean, Dark Eldar, yeah, in 40K I used to, you know, I've played against those back when I used to do 40K, but I have not played much in the way of, I'm going to move my mouse. I've never played against Dark Elves, so I don't know a ton about them. Space Pirates, yes, I have heard that, especially in the 40K, that's kind of the way it works. So yeah, let's see here. I really like these single sprue plastic figures that they've done. I know that they are not super customizable, frankly, but I really do like the way that they work. Hello, it is 12 a.m. where I am. Decided to stop in by anyway. Emir, well, that's cool. I appreciate it. I think I'm going to be doing these on Sunday mornings here because it's generally a decent time for me. Plus, it's also a bit later in the evening / afternoon over in Europe, and so yeah, we'll have to figure out how that goes. My kids got me a White King for Christmas. He is so fun to paint and to sculpt and has a lot of depth. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I mean, I'm going to airbrush the heck out of his cloak. The one thing I'm going to have a hard time with, I think, is the fact that he's got this square base, and I don't know if you can see it here, but his foot is actually integrated into the base, so I'm going to have to figure out a way to, because I want to put him on a round base, obviously, I'm going to have to clip away, I think, all these edge pieces all the way around, and then sink him onto a, you know, a normal, like maybe like a 32 millimeter base, and then green stuff the heck out of him, you know, to get it all so that it works that way. The rest of him, though, I'm going to build pretty much normal, I think. Someone asked about the Orc, the new Orc models that finally showed up, and yeah, they do look really cool. I've got a couple of friends that are thinking about going that direction. The one being Sam, painter Sam Lenz. He's interested in going in the Orc direction because he's always been kind of an Orc player. He was mostly an Orc player when he was doing, you know, 40K and stuff like that. So, having a little bit of coffee. Let's see here. Yeah, the Blood Knights also look really cool. Also the Black Knights. The Black Knights come in that start collecting box for the Skeleton Horde. It's funny that they call it Skeleton Horde and then they give you 10 skeletons, which is actually like half a box of skeletons, I think. At least I think it is. Maybe, well, maybe it's not. Maybe it is a full box of skeletons, but it's not particularly a horde when you have 10 skeletons. So it comes with that a set of Black Knights, 10 skeletons, and then the one big dude riding some sort of flying monster horse thing. Duralis, new orcs look fine, but bright yellow doesn't look that good. A lot of people have complained about the bright yellow paint jobs they gave those orcs, and I understand it. I mean, you know, obviously we can all paint them in the way we want, and it's more important to look at the model. But yeah, I don't know why they did that yellow. I mean, I know that there's probably, like in 40K, you've got, what, the Bad Moons, they're always yellow, or something like that. But yeah, so let's see here. Ted Morey says he basically just reads the books and the materials because it's pretty expensive. And for a lot of things, especially with 40K, that's totally the case. But with, I don't know, I'm enjoying Age of Sigmar because you can play with smaller armies and smaller units. So yeah, I kind of like that. You know, we've got people at our local shop. There's a guy right now at our local shop who's been a Magic player for a really long time. And he's starting to get into Age of Sigmar because he loves zombies, and he heard us talking about it, and he's like, so you can play just like as many zombies as you want? And we're like, yeah, pretty much. So yeah, he's doing that, and that'll be interesting. I mean, he has painted evidently in the past, but it was more, I think, models and things like that. All right, I'm going to actually start clipping stuff here, and that'll be different than last time, in which I didn't really clip much at all. That's clipping that. And I'm clipping this part. I know this is super interesting. That sword flexed a lot more than I would have liked when I clipped, so I'm a little nervous about that. Okay, I got that part off. And this looks like it's part of his cloak. It's got a lot of cool, what do you call that, chainmail. That's going to be fun to paint. Just to say basically dry brush, but yeah, you know. Okay. Let's see. 521 Wallace says, I get started in Age of Sigmar after watching all of your videos. I've got my first box of Glade Guard, base coated and shaded, going to start highlighting today. Thanks for all the great content. Well, I appreciate it, and I'm glad that you're getting interested in Age of Sigmar. I'm glad that you're, or specifically glad you're painting. That's honestly the big thing. You know, I do like to build. I enjoy that quite a bit, but the models just always look better, and I think possibly play better when they've been painted. So let's see, that's another part. This is his, I have to get in there and figure that out. That looks like it's a part of the scabbard right there. That is delicate. That is the downside to skeletons, is that they are very delicate little figures because, you know, they're skeletons. So yeah, that becomes difficult. Okay. Oops. I just had a thought about a technical issue. Are you guys hearing? Okay, I'm going to hit pause. I'm going to turn off the sound real quick. All right, I just want to make sure I had the right microphone on. Every once in a while, it ends up using the microphone in this webcam up here and not my big honking microphone that I've got down here. So yeah, I just want to make sure I had the right one on. Let's look at some stuff over here. Precisely what I don't like about Age of Sigmar, those small armies, you never get that sense of epicness. Well, you can get a sense of epicness if you decide to play an army, a group that big. Oops. But if you want to play something smaller, or if you want to start small and grow up, you can, and move towards a bigger army, you can do that too. So, my fiance and I are wearing your shirts at the moment, Adam. Complete coincidence, but a good one. Oh, well, that's very nice. I'm glad that you guys purchased some shirts, and that's cool. I appreciate it. Yeah, I'm going to probably do another shirt sale probably sometime in the fall. It'll be a different design altogether. I have an idea. I was bouncing it off of Sam last time I saw him. Well, that's not true. Last time we shot together in the studio, I was bouncing the idea off of him. But yeah. That Wargamer says that it is too much. I am actually clipping models. No, I know. It is crazy. Just finished painting my first model last. Pill bottle stick stuff really worked. Yeah, the pill bottle stuff is really, really helpful. I find just having a big handle to hold on to when you're working on paint, that's for me, and being able to turn it upside down and get at it from underneath and all kinds of stuff like that, I find that to be super helpful. Let's see, I've been doing a lot of Mantic's older stuff lately. Like Warpath or things like that. Been thinking about starting Age of Sigmar. I have Skaven and Chaos armies, lots of them modded. Except bases, are there any other mods I should consider? Lots of greetings from Greece. Well, thank you. Honestly, you don't have to convert your guys into round bases if you don't want to. If I had a whole bunch of guys already done in squares, I would just leave them in squares, frankly, just because it seems like a lot of extra work. Unless you were like really like, well, I have to do it this way and they have to look that way. But frankly, other than that, I don't see them being any other. I mean, that's the thing that's nice, is that if you did used to play Fantasy, you can just immediately go and download a bunch of War Scrolls with Age of Sigmar and just start going from there. So, anyone have some ideas how I can convert Corsairs to Bleak Sword or Dwarven Spears? I think that must be a Dark Elf thing, so I'm not too sure about that. I recommend Vampire Counts for many reasons. I kind of like the look of the army. I like the skeletons. I'm not as big into Tomb Kings, but I do like the Vampire Count stuff. Definitely look forward to a new shirt sale. You have 2 guaranteed sales right here. I love supporting you in the channel. I appreciate it. That's cool. I got into Warhammer last year. So far, I have just been collecting a few armies. Right now, I have a bit of Skaven, High Elves, Empire, Khorne, and Stormcast. I guess I really like variety. I would say a lot of gamers kind of like variety. A lot of them have a tendency to have a little. Some people will refer to it as gamer ADD and kind of switch around between games or switch around between armies. And I think that everybody kind of suffers from that to some degree. But it's a lot of fun. I don't know. I like it quite a bit, and I like being able to build smaller armies and kind of alternate between them. And if you really want to, you can mix them all together. There's nothing that says you can't. Most people have a tendency to stick in the same grand alliance, but you don't have to. Someone asked, what clippers am I using? Let's see here. These are Excelite. I got them at some like electronic supply store probably 15 years ago, almost about that long, really long time ago. They're just real quick little. They're designed to be side clippers. Like one part here, you'll notice is this side's flat, and they kind of bend a little bit. And then you put the flat part against like what you want to clip, and then you just clip. Some people will use what looks to me like a wire cutters, and those I don't think work quite as well. These kind of give you a much cleaner clipping, generally. But yeah, so yeah, then there's not as much generally to clean off, I think. Let's see. Started playing Age of Sigmar only 3 months ago, and I'm buying models quicker than I can paint them. Well, that is a problem that a lot of people have, is that they have a tendency, because it's so easy to buy new models, and you get this kind of, I don't want to say adrenaline rush, maybe it's endorphins or whatever, but you're like, oh boy, and then it takes a lot longer to paint all those models. That's the case with everybody. So yeah. I was not able to attend your talk at Adepticon over YouTubing. What was it basically over? Well, I did 2 seminars at Adepticon about YouTube. One was about technical stuff, about cameras and audio and editing software and lighting and things like that. And I just basically touched on a lot of stuff. And then on the second day, on Sunday, I did another one about marketing and content and branding. You know, you'll notice over there, you know, the logo. I don't think I can make this happen. Can I do this? So I've always got the logo kind of stuff up here. There's just things like that are always important for doing the, you know, the kind of branding, sticking with, you know, the colors that you want, doing that kind of stuff, using your logo all the same, using the same fonts, all that jazz. That's a big deal about branding. Content is a wholly different story. It's all about trying to figure out like what kind of things you want to focus on. So definitely been curious about Age of Sigmar. I started a month and a half ago with 40K and started with Cadians, but I'm hoping to get something a little less uniform and more interesting to paint. That's one of the reasons why I've been so interested lately in Age of Sigmar, honestly, is because I do find the stuff to be a lot more interesting to paint. That's one of the things that I like quite a bit. Let's see here. Not sure if this has been discussed. What do you think about the new orc models? It has been discussed a little bit. I think that they're really interesting sculpts. And like I said, I've got a couple of friends that are interested in going that direction and making some orc armies. One of them being what's his name? With Sam. Yeah, Sam Lenz. He's looking at doing it because he's been a 40K player of orcs for a long time. Let's see. Yeah, they do have a lot of armor, the ones that they're showing. I mean, you know, the normal kind of rank and file type troops are still not as armored as those big guys. I think those big guys are designed to be a little bit more elite. That's why they have so much extra armor. Do I know anything about the Crimson Slaughter Chaos Space Marine supplement? Not really, I don't. I know, I mean, I'm familiar with Crimson Slaughter to some degree, but I don't really know much about the supplement. Was that a relatively recent book? I know that they've been putting out lots of extra kind of interesting books recently. Well, you know, interesting is maybe a point of view situation, but yeah. Let's see here. In Age of Sigmar, I'm using Mantic Dwarf Badger Cavalry with Bretonnian War Scrolls because I need cavalry in my dwarf army. That's cool. I think that's what's also kind of neat, too, about Age of Sigmar is that, you know, since there's not really at this point much in the way of, what do you call it, you know, organized play, you can use whatever models you really want. The guy that I know at the shop who has started doing zombies, he's got like 20 zombies that are GW, you know, Vampire Count zombies, and then he's got a box of 40 that are Mantic, and then just mixing them all together looks really actually quite good. So, yeah, I don't really have a problem with that kind of stuff, and I think that a lot of people, again, since there's not any real, you know, if you're not really into tournament play, and even if you are in a tournament play, GW is really not doing much in the way of these tournaments anymore, so I don't know. Although, those of you who've been looking online this morning, well, this morning here, on the Age of Sigmar page on Facebook, there is a big graphic saying, hey, we've got this big new announcement coming tomorrow, it's going to change this and that and the other thing or whatever. So a lot of people are online right now, like going back and forth trying to figure out, well, what is it, what are they talking about? Some people are saying that they're going to be getting back into doing tournament play. I don't know. Some people are saying, oh, it's going to be a point system. There's a lot of stuff going back and forth, so I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what it's actually going to be, but we're going to have to wait till tomorrow. Yeah, Mr. Gulvin. GW said they would have a big announcement in the next 24 hours. Lots of people are guessing it's going to be a point system. Yeah, I don't know if it's going to be a point system. I think it would be really weird if they did it that way, but I mean, I guess it's a potential possibility, you know, and then it would only have to be a point system. That's the thing. If they made it a point system, what would happen would be people would be like, oh, okay, well, then we'll just use that point system in our tournament. But I just don't know. I mean, because people don't use regular vanilla 40K at their tournaments. They almost always have to modify it quite a bit because 40K is not really even designed to be a tournament game these days. So, yeah, I don't know. It's going to be very interesting. I would be very surprised if it was points. I don't know what it'll be, but I think, yeah, I don't know, because that's the thing. If they did get back into tournament stuff, like, you know, the South Coast GT recently did that big thing, and GW like talked about them on their Facebook page, and they showed up to the South Coast GT and they live blogged from the South Coast GT. So I just don't know if they want to go down that road, but I don't know. We'll see. Let's see here. Are Chaos Demons any good in AOS? I'm getting demon models for 40k to ally with my Chaos Space Marine army, but I'm interested in AOS. I haven't played against anybody who has Chaos Demons, but I do know that they do work pretty well. I mean, I do know that they work as models, especially since the round bases, everything works out that nice that way. I would just take a look at some of the War Scrolls, which you can download for free, and you can kind of go from there. Let's see here. I love that Age of Sigmar allows you to be very flexible with the lore behind your armies. For example, I have a Chaos army, and I've started to get units from the Death Grand Alliance, but the Vamps and Whites serve Chaos. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing that's cool, too, is that, like, you know, whether you stick in the same, whatever you call it, the same Grand Alliance or not, even if you don't, you know, you can just say, well, these guys tricked these guys, and now these guys are following them, or whatever. I mean, you know, there's some sort of, excuse me, there's some sort of amulet or something that is, you know, allowing them to bring these skeletons along to fight for chaos or to fight for destruction or who knows, you know, whatever. So yeah, this talk makes me want to start a Death Grand Alliance army, but I just spent a lot of money on the Baneblade and Creed. Oh well, yeah, sure, I could see that. Let's see here. I have bought some 40k miniatures, plan on buying much more. I have no interest in playing, I just like painting them. Do you find that usual with miniature collectors? I don't know if it's usual because I have a tendency to hang out with actual like players a lot, but I do know a lot of people. I've got a couple of friends actually that do buy and then don't play. They just like to build them and they like to paint them and things like that. I have purchased models before myself where I'm like, I know I'm never going to play this model, but I do want to put it together and paint it, you know, and then just set it someplace. And I've done some of that, so I don't think it's, you know, outside of the realm, frankly. So yeah. So yeah. Let's see here. A lot of people just paint Warhammer or build the hobby side of it. It's absolutely fine. I agree. Yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with doing that. And like I said, I mean, it's, you know, maybe you build some stuff and then maybe you build some other stuff and you paint it. And then eventually maybe you get interested in the actual game and you start, you know, doing that, but you don't have to. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of people who do it that way. I honestly, if you look at hours played versus hours painted and building, I do far more painting and building myself. You know, like I was playing a game last night of Age of Sigmar at my local shop, and we quit. I gotta ask people about that. We quit about halfway through because the mission we were playing, it seems as if it's mathematically impossible for one side to win. So let me ask you guys a question. How many people here have played the battle plan that's in the big, thick Age of Sigmar hardcover book? It's called The Ritual. One group is trying to fire off this ritual, and they have this place that they're protecting, and the other side has to go over, basically, and travel half the long way of the board to get there, and their general has to be able to do this kind of spell on a 2-up. It's only a 2-up, but he has to do it on his hero phase. Has anybody here played The Ritual, that particular battle plan? And if they have they ever actually destroyed the artifact? Because we started sitting down and doing the math, trying to figure out how fast you'd have to move across before the other. It just doesn't seem like it's super doable, so that's kind of why we stopped. But yeah, The Ritual. That Wargamer says, yes, The Ritual. It's BS, isn't it? We did seem to think that it was a little weird. It might be something that we might look into trying to modify, because it's not a very good, it's not a super good one. Let's see here, what else have we got? I ran my first demo game of AOS. You saw my comment on that. It was pretty damn fun. Don't know if I can commit to it yet. Well, you know, I mean, it's, again, it's not necessarily for everybody. A lot of people prefer playing a different way, and that's cool. I like playing this way because I like being able to, again, like I said, play with smaller groups, smaller armies and things like that. I'm generally kind of a skirmish gamer for the most part, and so this is just like you can start out being kind of skirmish, and then you can kind of move from there and go into other stuff. But if anybody's interested, I am currently trying to get mold lines off, and and some of the little clippy bits that I just took off. So I'm generally using my X-Acto, and I'm scraping along these little edges here, trying to smooth out his cloak. I can absolutely guarantee to you that this very smooth plastic cloak is going to get covered with liquid green stuff to make it look kind of grungy and dirty. If any of you have ever watched that video, you're going to probably know what I'm talking about. In that video, I did that on a Cairn Wraith, who is going to end up joining this army. Yeah, that's the thing. I've already got this Necromancer and the Cairn Wraith that I've used for other games for years, and they just fit perfectly into this army because they're from this army. So, you know, I'm already ahead. That's what I keep telling myself. I'm already ahead. Let's see here. What is the army you most enjoy to play at the moment? I personally have enjoyed Nurgle and Khorne quite a bit, but after purchasing, started collecting greenskins and pre-ordering. And then let's scroll up a little bit. And pre-ordering the new orcs. I have to say that I'm probably, well, right now I'm most interested in Nurgle, obviously, Nurgle/Chaos. And I'm also most interested in, right now, this kind of death, you know, not Tomb Kings, but more Vampire Count type guys. Because I think, I don't know, I just really like the, way that the army looks. For me, it's not a ton about how it plays necessarily, because again, I'm not a competitive or tournament player, but it's more about how it looks. And so, you know, like this dude right here, I mean, that's a great looking model. The Cairn Wraith is a great looking model. The Necromancer is a great looking model, and I love skeletons. Like, I wouldn't necessarily go zombies, I don't think, in my army, but I definitely love skeletons. And they're super quick to paint, too, which I really like, so. I've always been scraping with the blade, Twisted Bishop. That's how you get rid of mold lines. That's how I get rid of them. Not everybody does. Sometimes I also use one of these little emery board doohickeys and then kind of catch along the edges, but the heavy lifting gets done generally with scraping with the blade. It doesn't necessarily sound awesome, but, you know. Would you consider doing a how-to series on the basics of 40K or 8th edition fantasy? Probably not necessary with Age of Sigmar. I don't think I would, because I don't really... Well, I've never played Fantasy 8th edition, really. This is the first foray into fantasy, honestly, Age of Sigmar, for me. And as far as 40K, I've played maybe one game of 7th edition 40K, so I don't think I'd be the guy to do that. I think Age of Sigmar... No, not Age of Sigmar. I think Mini Wargaming, that's what I was trying to say. I think Mini Wargaming did a whole series about how to play 40K, so I would probably look into that if you were looking for some sort of starter thing, you know, but... that Wargamer, what if this announcement is not a point system? That's a good question. What if this announcement is not a point system? I don't know. I don't know what it's going to be, frankly. I really don't. Liquid Green Stuff video was actually the first video of yours we ever watched, and that got us into your channel. Oh, thanks. It's been my most popular video, still. The Secrets to Games Workshop's pricing model video is getting up there quite quickly, but that one right now is still #1. Yeah. Tim Boddington asks, why Liquid Green Stuff and not Typhus Corrosion? Liquid Green Stuff, to me, gives me a little bit more control over the sculpting. Like, I can kind of put this stuff where I want it, whereas Typhus Corrosion, you sort of paint it on, and it just sort of the little gritty bits sort of show up where they show up. Plus, the grit in Typhus Corrosion is a lot smaller, so if I want it to be a little bit more pronounced, that's why I use the Liquid Green Stuff. Also, to some degree, it can help to hide some seams a little bit, but it takes a lot more work than they say it does, so that's why I kind of use Liquid Green Stuff for cloaks that I want to look grungy and stuff like that. My goodness, these are going fast and furious over here. Hey, from Sweden. What tea are you drinking? I am sorry, not drinking tea. Being an American, I'm drinking pretty much, that's coffee. So, I find that good old English breakfast is best when I'm assembling minis, but Earl Grey usually brings out the best of my painting ability. Well, that's good to hear. Yeah, no, I'm generally a coffee drinker. I do sometimes drink tea. I've started to get into it a little bit. I did research on how to best mix the milk and the this and that and all that stuff, and, you know, where you mix, do you pour the milk into the tea, or do you pour the tea into the milk, and all that kind of stuff. It's interesting, but I haven't actually done Now that it's getting warmer, I don't usually drink as much tea, and I only pretty much just drink coffee in the morning, so I'm going to have some right now. Let's see here. I have a few fantasy HQs. I don't even play fantasy, but they're awesome looking models. I agree. Part of the reason I was always interested into getting into fantasy, even though I didn't really want to have to build all that stuff, was because I thought a lot of the models were really cool. I mean, there were some that I did not like the look of, frankly. But, yeah, I always thought that the models were always going to look really cool. And I liked the look of them, and that's why I was really interested when they made the big change into Age of Sigmar, because then I could kind of pick and choose a little bit more. You know, you don't have to follow any particular army building rules anymore, like, oh, you can only have this many HQs and this many this and whatever. You can kind of do whatever you want as far as that's concerned, and I like that. All right, I think that sword's looking pretty clean. So yeah, let's see here. I hope that GW will bring Tomb Kings back. There has been some talk, and I forget where I saw it, but someplace somebody was saying that, you know, they've discontinued a lot of the older models, but that doesn't mean that the lines themselves are going to be completely gone. Like, they may bring back some of that stuff. They may not, but they may. It's hard to tell. I mean, honestly, if you look at that Start Collecting Skeleton Horde box, that big creature in there, the big main, like, kind of HQ unit, that's a Tomb Kings model, I'm pretty sure. I mean, he's got like a big crazy Egyptian-looking headdress thing going on. I think you can build him other ways. You can build him as Manfred von Manfred or whatever, and then, you know, on Skeletal Horse or whatever the deal is. I haven't looked at all of the War Scrolls as much as I should, but the trick is that you can kind of do that, and, you know, that might be the way to go. Yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see if they do bring that kind of stuff back or not. Let's see. What are my thoughts on the new orc models? Well, yeah, like I said a couple of times in the previous, I think they're kind of cool looking. I got all lost over here. That's why I can't work with rustic. Scraping the blade, it never works for me. Only the back of the blade. Yeah, I do have to say that, like, one of the reasons I got out of War Machine was because when they came out with their new plastic models, which are basically rustic, the mold lines were really difficult to get rid of. Plus, a lot of the mold lines were in places that were terrible, like over pieces of detail. So you'd have to scrape off detail just to get off mold lines, and I didn't dig that. Let's see here. End times for 40K. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, they've never been super interested in moving the story further along. It'll be interesting if they do someday, but a lot of people are like, oh, they're going to make 40K into Age of Sigmar. They're going to keep, and I'm like, I really don't think they are. I honestly think, and I've said this before, possibly even in the last live show, I think they're going to take, I think that they're keeping Age of Sigmar aimed towards newer players, and then if you get interested in moving on and getting into something really fancy, then you're going to move into 40K. And when you do that, obviously you will have to buy new models, because you're now going to need to get sci-fi dudes, unless you go with Chaos Demons. But you're going to need sci-fi dudes instead of your fantasy guys. And then you end up buying new models. If a lot of the people who were like, well, I don't know why they didn't just make Age of Sigmar and fantasy, so that when you decide you want to move into something fancier and more detailed or whatever, then you could just move into 9th edition fantasy. Well, the problem is then you'd already have all those models bought. And the way that they do it now, if you want to move into a bigger game or something like that, you're going to have to buy Space Marines or Eldar or whatever, and the models just aren't going to match up. You can't take skeletons and put them into 40K. I just don't think it's going to work. So I think that's what it's going to be. Let's see here. I haven't played Age of Sigmar since no one in my local area plays, strictly 40K, but wow, I love all the Fire Slayers and their beasts. Yeah, there's a lot of people who like the dwarves and a lot of people who don't for whatever reason. It's one of those kind of polarizing sort of armies where you look at it and go, boy, I really like these. A lot of people go, boy, I really don't like these. And I think they're well done. I just don't ever see myself building any. I do love a lot of the range attacks that they seem to have. That's really kind of nice, as I've been playing more and more against friends who use more and more range stuff, and I noticed that my Nurgle guys really don't have much in the way of range at all, and how that kind of can hamstring you when you're trying to play. So yeah, I'm being I'm paying a lot more attention to range, and I know that the dwarves, the Duardin, excuse me, they have a lot of well, they have those organ guns. They have guys with pistols. They have, I think, crossbowmen, stuff like that. One of the reasons I'm getting into skeletons, I think, is because then I can go with skeleton archers, even though technically they are Tomb Kings, but I can make them look not like Tomb Kings, kind of. Like, you just don't put on all that extra Egyptian stuff, and then just don't paint any metallic golds. Just go all, if they're wearing a helmet, paint it iron so it doesn't look like it's an Egyptian kind of helmet. And if it's got extra Egyptian, like a little snaky thing on the forehead, like there's some sort of pharaoh or something like that, just clip that junk off. It's just there's nothing wrong with it. It's just, if I'm trying to do vampire counts, you can't get vampire counts archers. There's only, Tomb King archers, and they're not even really in stock anymore, so you've got to find what you can find, like online and stuff. But Mantic carries a line of skeleton archers, but I think the bodies are plastic and the metal, or the bow and arrow parts are metal, so that's kind of I don't like mixing those together too much if I don't have to. Do I ever use blood for the blood god? I think I own a bottle of it, but I've never used it. I should probably use it some more, like on some of the Nurgle stuff, just for the splattery blood effects. A lot of people that I know use Tamiya, it's the Japanese company, like Smoke Red, and that is, I took a class 2 years ago at Adepticon about blood and pus and gore and stuff like that, and I think I have a bottle now that I come to think of it, of Tamiya Smoke Red. So, but I haven't really done a lot of that. I really should. If I did the Death Grand Alliance, it'd be the one they show in the book with the ghosts and ghosts. Yeah, the ghosts are cool. I like some of those. Like, I don't know if I could ever paint them right, but I do like the look of them. Painting a ghost seems hard. Like that Karen Wraith, I mean, he's not translucent or anything, so you don't have to worry about it. But like a lot of those, like spirit hosts and things like that they show in the book, I would think that you would want to kind of go from there. Let's see here. I would like your opinion. GW prices in Poland are insane. They always were high, but AOS, darn. Yeah, I noticed after seeing the prices come out in the UK for the orcs, and then seeing the prices come out in America and doing the conversion, like that big dude on Maw Crusher, he's like X amount of pounds, I forget how many, which translates to like $94. But then when it finally, the website updated for America, he's like $110. So there's definitely like, this increase in price because they got to ship it over here. And it's even worse, from what I understand, in Australia. Like in Australia, that guy is like $180. Now, obviously, American dollars and Australian dollars are not the same, but still, it's interesting the way that those things kind of get, changed as they go on, but that's international business. Fox says, I hope it's an announcement for a new army. Well, some people are talking about that it might be an announcement for a new army. Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. A bunch of people are having a discussion about tea, and that's fine. Milk or honey, depending on the type of tea. Yeah, I generally with milk and then like a little bit of sugar. Let's see here. Couldn't tell you what it's like in Poland, but New Zealand and Australia prices are over the top ridiculous. Yeah, I would say that's the case. From what I have read, and just from looking at prices and running, the statistics and looking at like, well, what's the Australian dollar versus say the American dollar, and how much we're paying, how much you guys are paying, it is kind of crazy. And the thing is that some, well, maybe not, but you would think that they would build, or they would, I mean, some of the stuff gets done in China now. Not all of it, but some of it, I think, does. The stuff that they do more of, you would think. So China is closer to Australia than it is to the UK, I think. Let's see here. I despise tea and coffee. Well, that's fine. See, I wish this chat window was a little bit more user-friendly. I don't even know where I am now. Oh, wait. Okay, so I'm way behind, evidently. $140 for start collecting here in Australia. They are $85 in America. So I should look up what the American versus Australian dollar is. Let's see. Clearly the news will be about a merge of Warhammer Age of Sigmar and Flames of War. I don't think that's going to be the case. Those are made by different companies. Flames of War is about World War II. Be interesting, I guess, but I don't think so. Have you ever recast your models to try to get test models or for duplicate? No. I've got a friend who does casting from time to time, not on models so much, but like he has cast like, you know, terrain pieces here and there. Sometimes he's cast bits. I have this putty called Instaputty, and you get it, you like microwave a mug of hot water. Well, no, you microwave a mug of water and turn it hot, and then you put this plastic into the hot water, and it gets very malleable. And then you could take like a shield from a skeleton or whatever, and you could press it into the mold, and then you drop, you know, that putty into like cold water, and it hardens. And then you have this mold, and you could push green stuff into it to make copies of things. I've done a little bit of that, mainly just because I'm like, I want to put this on the base of this model, but I don't want to waste this shield, so I'm just going to have like a shield, you know, and I'm just going to make a copy of it, and if it looks a little grungy, I'll put some, you know, sand and grit on top of it like it's half buried. I like doing stuff like that on my bases, but I've never actually recast an entire model, no. Let's see here. Any chance you would start doing unboxings? Really enjoy the tone of your channel, and a look at model in-depth model would be cool. Don't have to be a new model. Old ones are cool to see too. I don't know if I'm going to do unboxings. I have kicked around the idea recently of doing videos about like models that I've painted, and then kind of talk, almost like a recap. Like, here's the model I painted, and then I can be like, and here I used this, you know, technique, and over here. I'm doing it over here, you can't see it, but you know, I could have some model and be like, you know, some big model that I worked on or something, and say, okay, well, this is what I did for the base, and this is what I did here, and that kind of stuff, and I could talk about why I did certain things I did or whatever, and techniques I might have used, and that would be almost like a, like I said, like a recap. And I've thought about doing that, but actual unboxings of new stuff, I mean, I don't buy a ton of stuff, and I don't know if I want to get into that game where I'm asking, you know, manufacturers to send me stuff so that I can unbox it on. I don't know. I mean, I know what stuff is generally, those videos can be popular, but I don't know. I'm not sure about that. Let's see here. I hope they release the rules for 40K for free. Yeah, well, the upfront is pretty scary for 40K. That's true. Having to buy an $85 book or whatever it is, that's difficult. That's a difficult pill to swallow right off the bat. I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know what this big announcement's going to be. I mean, it's going to be about Age of Sigmar. It's not going to be about 40K. But let's see here. Still pretty much. Do Skaven have range that could fulfill the role in a Nurgle army? Well, actually, kind of. Yes, There's the Plague Claw Catapult, which has got the Nurgle keyword, and I've been using that. I didn't bring it upstairs. It's still downstairs. I built it. The reason that I'm a little bit behind on all of these Plague Monks is because I built the Plague Claw Catapult, and it's about ready for paint. I've textured the entire base and gotten all that stuff done, so that's coming up next. And then there's also the Warp Fire Thrower and some sort of mortar, and they came in the Isle of Blood like starter box for 7th or 8th edition, like a long time ago. It was like Skaven versus High Elves, and so those models are in there, and I've actually found one. I found that Isle of Blood for original price, not even marked up or anything, for original price at a convention I went to in February, and I bought it, and then I sold the other half of it to my friend who wanted the elves and stuff, and I kept the Skaven, and so it was a really super great deal. Like, seriously, I think I paid $40 for a ton of Skaven stuff, and it worked out really great. So they're good range units as well. So there's not like any Skaven archers or anything like that, but some of those bigger artillery pieces are good for that. So let's see. Shooting potential in Dwarf Army is insane. Yeah, the dwarves are very shooty. That's definitely. Rattling guns. I've been thinking about rattling guns. I don't know about the models, but I've been looking at them. Yeah, the catapults. The catapult's cool. I like that. And I like the fact that it's got the Nurgle keyword, so I don't have to worry about it, you know. Always love the fantasy models, though a lot look outdated and goofy. Yeah, some of the older fantasy models do look pretty outdated, but the newish stuff I think is amazing. Let's see, I'm trying to scroll through here. Making Fire Slayers at the moment. Many nice details with the runes and the keys. Love it. Like the many details in the skulls of my main Chaos Army. Yeah, there's a lot of detail in these models, obviously. Yeah, they're great. Combine the Tamiya Clear Red with Uhu glue. You can make really stringy blood or saliva. You can work it into really fine strands. That was actually part of that class that I took at Adepticon. Like, it was like a $35 class 2 years ago, but you got a tube of the Uhu glue, which you evidently can't get in America anymore because it's poisonous. So I didn't actually use it because basically what you have to do is you take this glue, it's like a glue stick, and you put it on your fingers, and then you start basically kind of doing this, and then eventually you just keep squishing your fingers together and pulling them apart, and eventually you get these long stringy bits, and then that's what you make saliva or drippy stuff, and you cut off the pieces like with the tweezers, and then you glue it onto. And I'm just not going to do that with something that is kind of poisonous. I just didn't want to go that direction. But the Tamiya Red stuff worked out really well, and I can't remember what else came in that kit, but it was one of those classes where it was more expensive, but you got a bunch of stuff that you took home with you, including that glue, including the Tamiya. Some sort of like maybe a yellow wash from Vallejo to make things look a little bit more, diseased or whatever, and that was kind of interesting. So yeah. Let's see here. What music do I listen to? Oh gosh. A lot of stuff, mostly I guess more maybe indie rock based sometimes, and some older stuff I guess. I don't know. That's a big question. What's the lowest temperature it can be to safely spray prime your minis? I live in an area of the country where it does get cool quite frequently, so I don't generally like to go out and spray prime under 60 degrees Fahrenheit. Yeah. Now there are people out there who will take like a bowl of water, like warm or hot water, and they will actually set their paint spray can in that water and warm it up in the house, and then take it out and spray. And then you can kind of get away with it a little bit, but I generally don't go below 60 degrees Fahrenheit. If it's anything lower than that, I don't want to prime, and I certainly don't want to use dull coat because it will fog badly. Dull coat you have to be very careful with. It'll fog. It'll also fog if it's too humid. If you spray it from too far away, it will fog. If the day ends in Y, sometimes it will fog. I mean, it's tough. Let's see here. The fact that I can put any models together in the Order Grand Alliance is amazing. It makes the game so much more fun. Yeah, I agree. A lot of people like that. I love the fact that I can mix Skaven, Chaos, Nurgle, although Chaos and Nurgle have always been a little bit more close together, but Skaven, Beastmen, I do love my goat people. I love putting all that stuff together, so yeah. I've noticed that Age of Sigmar models seem to be cheaper than 40k models here in the Australia. That's interesting, because a lot of people complain about how the newer Age of Sigmar models are more expensive. Like those Varengard, they're pretty expensive. They're super powerful, don't get me wrong. In the game last night, they were the MVPs, because they just charged into a group of Chaos Trolls, and I mean, they eventually died, like in second turn, but they did a lot of damage and really, stopped traffic for quite some time, and they were pretty powerful. Plus, I put a Mystic Shield on them, too, so then they had like a 2-up save, which was helpful. Why are they not repacking skeletons, graveyards, and cavalry? I don't know. That's a good question. They really should. I think it's just because they've got too much stuff on their plate, and maybe they just get to a point where they're like, we need to make sure we have, as a business, if you have too many irons in the fire, you become less effective, you become less, you can't turn on a dime as much, you can't get things done, and that's kind of an issue. So I think that's probably part of it, frankly. They have to really kind of pull back a little bit. Because obviously they're making changes between the stuff that they're doing now finally with social media. I mean, they asked people to send in questions for frequently asked questions, and then they went through and they answered all the questions and put them up on Facebook first to get people's reaction before they actually made a final PDF. I mean, that's crazy. That's not something that they usually do, but there you go. Let's see here. I just missed a whole bunch here. Cleaning my house and having you chat in the background about models. This is a good Sunday. Well, good. I'm glad to hear it. Let's see here. At our store, a kid got a ton of Skaven for free since they had to get rid of old fantasy demonstration models. Oh, well, that's good. Were they all painted? That's a good question. Let's see here. How long does it take you to paint a unit of 10 models? I know I will be slower since I'm a beginner, but I'm just wondering if I'm moving at a snail's pace. I have a tendency to be a slow painter, so I'm not necessarily the best guy to ask. I have found that as I've been going, I've been trying to force myself to go faster. I took a class 2 years ago at Adepticon about speed painting, and one of the first things the guy said, he's like, well, if you want to paint faster, try moving your brush faster. Which I thought was a terrible piece of advice, frankly. I could have probably figured that out. But, yeah, it is just a situation of, like, not noodling with it so much. It's a situation of, like, especially with the skeletons, if you sit there and focus and work for, like, 5 minutes on one of their shields and you have another 60 guys to go through, it's going to take you forever. So you have to really just sort of, especially with the rank and file, you have to figure out a way to, like, a definite kind of assembly line and crank through them as quick as possible and go that way. And it seems to, for me at least, it's helped. I've been able to paint models faster that way. I also did a video about how to glue them onto paint sticks, like the stirrers that you use for stirring house paint. You can use whatever kind of sticks you want, but that's what I usually use. I've found that's helped me a lot too, because then I can just kind of, rather than having them on 5 separate pill bottles spread out around on my desk, they're all stuck on one long piece. If you watch that video, you'll be able to see me just basically, like, you know, talking about it and showing you how, well, you know, I can just, you know, paint this guy's horns and then this guy's horns and then this guy's horns and then this guy's horns, and it works out really nicely. So that kind of stuff, I think, finding little techniques like that has helped me at least to be able to paint faster when I'm painting larger groups of figures. I started a new army, Rotbringers. What do you think about Blight Kings? Oh, Blight Kings. Those are the first Age of Sigmar models I bought, and I bought them before Age of Sigmar came out. I just bought them because I thought they were awesome looking. They're so cool. That's one of the greatest kits that they've put out, in my opinion, in years, is the Putrid Blight Kings. They go together so many different ways. You could take 2 boxes of 5, put them together, and you can make them look almost completely different from each other. It's not like, oh, it's that guy's the same guy as that guy. They're just totally different. They're super great sculpts, and I really, really like them. So I have a unit of 5, like, painted and done. If you've probably seen possibly some of my social media stuff, or you've seen some of the pictures of them, I really enjoyed them. I love painting them, and I'm looking forward to doing them some more eventually. 10 Space Marines about 2 weeks to a good standard. Yeah, you know, I mean, it depends on how much time you've got to paint. I mean, I know people who try to paint, well, I know people who paint every day, but they're pros generally, or something like that. Some people can't paint that frequently. They just don't have time. They've got kids and, you know, whatever. Yeah, it depends. It depends on how much time you can, you know, put to it. Yeah, the Blight Kings can also take some punishment. That's true. Takes me about 8 hours to paint a single model like a cultist or a marine. Well, again, it depends on to what level you're painting them on. You know, like, I did that video a while back about rattle can tricks, and in that I painted 2 Chaos Cultists, and I kind of showed, like, a little bit of the before and then the after. And I worked on those really quickly. I just used a lot of washes. Like, once I had done the rattle can tricks, you know, kind of spraying them darker and then spraying them from above with a lighter color to give them that highlight, I just did a lot of washes, I painted some detail, and you can kind of crank through them sort of quick if you go that direction. If you're trying to paint to a super high standard, like if I'm painting, like when this guy, when I do eventually get him all done, him being an HQ unit, yeah, that's going to be, he's going to take a bit longer, I think, but I don't know. Focusing too much and constantly trying to get, you know, things perfect slows you down to the point where you don't make much progress. I did that video about the danger of perfection, or whatever it was called, and yeah, you need the price of perfection. You need to sometimes just be like, it's, you know, good enough is helpful for moving things forward sometimes. So yeah, I've seen people just heat up a clear sprue and stretch it for drool. Oh, yeah, like take a piece of clear sprue, like from like the flying bases, and then heat that up, and then get that clear plastic stringy bit, and you could use that. Yeah, that would work well too, I think. Let's see here. Gloom Dready Gaming. Oh, hi. Every child here in Germany had Uhu all over them in kindergarten for child crafty stuff. Never heard about any poisoning, nor ever poisoned myself. I don't know why it's not for sale in America anymore. It was some sort of issue. I mean, honestly, from what I understand, Tester's Dull Coat is no longer for sale in the EU, and we seem to think that's fine. So I don't know what the differences are, frankly. Personally, and my wife is going to laugh at this, but personally, I also don't like getting stuff, like when I was in the first grade, they made me finger paint and I threw up. So, yeah, so sometimes I just don't like getting all kinds of stuff all over my fingers. I don't seem to have a problem with glue, because Lord knows whenever I'm gluing anything together, I'm getting glue all over my fingers. But like that whole thing about taking the Uhu glue and doing that squishy bit, that just, when I was watching everybody else do it, I'm like, I don't want to do that. So I worked on other stuff during the class. I worked on other parts of that class. I did not do the glue icky stuff. So, but I understand, yeah, that's because the woman who had the glue for us, she had to order them through like Amazon UK, maybe, order them someplace over there to get that stuff. So yeah. Speaking of Sigmar, am I the only one that thinks the Star Drakes look really odd? Yeah, I don't like the look of the Star Drakes either, which is a bummer because I like a lot of the Stormcast stuff. I'm afraid of painting it. Like I was gonna work on Stormcast as my second army, but then I'm looking at it, I'm just like, everything I like to paint, I always like it to look grungy and dirty. I don't like things that are super, super clean. Back when I painted 40K, I always made everything look like it was like in the midst of battle and covered in grunge and mud and stuff like that. It's just, I don't know, it helps to hide not very good painting, but it also, I just think it looks more realistic. And those Age of Sigmar, the Sigmarines, the Sigmarites, whatever you want to call them, they seem difficult to do that with. And so that's why it's put me off and now headed me over to the Death Dudes, because obviously they're going to be a lot dirtier and grungier. The Star Drakes, just, I don't know, there's something about the way their wings work and the way that their arms are. I just don't like the look of them, frankly. So, nice mouse. I have the same one. Oh, well, thank you. I like cordless mice. I don't know why. Probably because I'm not much of a PC gamer. Let's see here. I think I missed the Blight Kings, and they are one of the reasons that I actually started the Rotbringers, painting the second one right now. Yeah, Blight Kings are super cool. Other models that are really great that are that same type of thing is now they call him the Lord of Plagues, but back before he was known as the Nurgle Chaos Lord. Old Drippy, I like to call him, and he's kind of an HQ unit. And then if you even go back further, like the first model that they ever made that looked anything like those guys is I think Chaos Lord on Demonic Mount, and it's like a metal model, well, or fine cast, depending on where you find it. And he's got that same sort of kind of like Blight King look, and I've got one of those in metal that I found on eBay somewhere, and I'm going to eventually build him for my Nurgle army, but I don't know, I just have such a hard time with metal, it's going to be difficult. Plus I'm trying to find the right base for him and everything, but yeah. Let's see here. The Hobbit strategy battle game has very cool minis, I find. Not all of them, but that type of fantasy style is my favorite. I own the Hobbit... No, not the Hobbit one. I own the Lord of the Rings SBG, which was the first book that they put out. It was obviously back when the Lord of the Rings movies came out, before the Hobbit one. And from what I understand, the Hobbit game was like an updated version of it. But I bought the hardcover or whatever main book, and because I found it someplace cheap. And yeah, it's an interesting rule set. It was interesting to see them take a very different look, or very different change, kind of, to how they did things. They changed the way that cover worked in comparison to, say, 40K or fantasy at the time. But being a skirmishy game, it was very interesting, and I always kind of wanted to play, but I just never really got into the models for whatever reason. I don't know why. I probably should have, because I kind of liked fantasy stuff, and I'm a big fan of the Lord of the Rings movies. My wife is a big fan of the books, not as much of the movies. She likes the movies well enough. We saw the first Hobbit movie, and we didn't watch the other two, but the regular Lord of the Rings movies, we're pretty big fans. Let's see here. How many mages do you use with your Nurgle army? I use the Rotbringer Sorcerer, and generally that's about it. But then I start bringing in some Skaven. So I've got a Skaven Plague Priest that I like to bring in, and I also have a Warlock Engineer. They're not painted yet, but I did just get them built, and they're kind of cool. The Warlock Engineer's got a lightning attack that's pretty neat, and the Plague Priest, he's got the Nurgle keywords, so I don't have to worry about him getting attacked by like Grandfather's Gift or Nurgle's Rot or any of those different kind of spells that are like kind of an area of effect and like affect a lot of people, because if you're Nurgle, you're not generally affected by that stuff. But yeah, that's why one of the reasons why I do like Skaven is because not all of them, but many of them also have the Nurgle keyword. If you go with Clan Pestilens, whatever it is, they work out well that way. So let's see, what game do you play mostly these days? Been thinking about getting into Frostgrave or Mordheim thing for Age of Sigmar. I've been playing Age of Sigmar a lot lately because I've got some friends that are playing it. I'm working more and more on Frostgrave as well. And what else? Wreck Age and This Is Not a Test, which are both more normal post-apocalyptic games. I have found recently, I think that I'm really into post-apocalyptic gaming. Age of Sigmar is also technically post-apocalyptic gaming. It's after the end times, everything has gone all kerflooey, and so it's post-apocalyptic. That's at least the way I look at it. Frostgrave is basically post-apocalyptic, only just pretty much just for this one city that's been, destroyed by being covered by ice for 1,000 years, and now the ice is, dissipated or is in the process of dissipating, and so it's post-apocalyptic that way. I just generally like games where everything is sort of ruined and busted and all that kind of stuff. So, Wreck Age is made by Hyacinth Games, and that's a skirmish game that's a much more, what we think of when we think of post-apocalyptic, Mad Maxy kind of stuff, whatnot. And This Is Not a Test is basically, if you've ever played Fallout, the video game, it's basically Fallout, the miniatures game. It's not, licensed per se, but a lot of the things are a lot of the same ideas and tropes and all that kind of stuff from Fallout. They don't do, like rad zombies or the feral ghouls or any kind of stuff like that, but a lot of the other stuff is, kind of straight out of that. And those are both. Wreck Age is a small indie company. This Is Not a Test is a small indie company. It's a company called World's End Publishing. They just had a pretty successful Kickstarter because the game's been around for a long time, at least several years as a PDF, but they wanted to finally do an actual hardcover book, and so they just had a Kickstarter recently, which I got in on just so I could get a copy of the hardcover, because I do generally kind of like those. I like PDFs as well, but I do sometimes like that stuff too. So, do I ever paint historical miniatures, and if so, what period? I played Flames of War, so that would be World War II, but I haven't really done anything else beyond that. Like, I haven't done like Napoleonic or American Civil War or any kind of stuff like that. So yeah, let's see here. I'm going back to see if I can catch some other stuff. What do you think of the Bulldog Wyvern? I'm assuming you're talking about the new Maw Crusher or whatever for the orcs. They'd like to do that a lot. If you've noticed, Games Workshop, whenever they make the bigger creatures, they always kind of do that thing where their wings are sort of like tipped forward and up. Like if you look at the whatever the heck those Stormcast guys are, we were just talking about them. I can't remember their dumb name. Like those have got the wings up. If you look at a lot of the vampire counts, like the Terrorgeists and those guys, they've always got those wings up and they're leaning forward. And I don't know if that's just a manufacturing thing. It's easier to put them together and make them look like that and stick them on a base as opposed to having them up and like spread out and whatnot. I don't know. It's an interesting look. That particular figure for an orc, it almost looks like he's like riding a gorilla. You know what I mean? But with wings, like he's riding a big winged gorilla. Which I guess if you're an orc guy, that totally makes sense. So that's interesting. Let's see here. Should I go start collecting Pestilens right now? The start collecting Pestilens comes with 20 of these lads. The Plague Monks. Comes with 20 Plague Monks. Comes with the Screaming Bell / Plague Furnace. I think you can build it either way, but I don't know for sure on that. But I know it comes with one of those at least, if not the ability to build either direction. And I think maybe a Plague Priest. I don't know what else comes in it, but it's a pretty decent kit. I mean, all of those Start Collecting boxes, when you look at them, they're saving you money because they're an $85 box, and if you were to price out all those parts together, it's always like at least $100. So you're always saving at least 15 or 20 bucks on those boxes. So if you're interested in that and you want to start doing, you know, Nurgle-based Skaven, that's the way to start, definitely. So yeah, let's see here. What else have I got in here? Questions. Have I seen the Dark Souls miniature game? I haven't seen the Dark Souls miniature game. I've never really played the video game, so I don't really know much about it, but I know it's very popular. Yeah, I've heard there was a board game, but is it a miniatures game? I guess I should look into it more. Bog989. Nope, that's not what I was going to ask. Nope, sorry. I mostly play dwarves, but I think it looks sick. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Are you going to put a banner on that White King? I was looking at the War Scroll, and I don't think so. If I did, I'd have to, because he doesn't come with a banner, you know what I mean? So I'd have to figure out a way to come up with one. So like his head and whatnot, it looks like it goes here. I just want to do some dry fitting for fun. And this guy is... I think I might have to do some... There we go. So he looks like thusly, and then this part goes back here so that he's got his sword sticking out, and then of course the big cape, which I thought about modifying. I like the way it's ripped up and everything like that, but like I said, he's definitely going to need to be a little fuzzier. I'm going to need some liquid green stuff to make him work a little better that way. Let's see here. I've been watching your channel for a while now, and your videos are my main contact with miniature gaming. Well, that's very good, I guess. I unfortunately live in Brazil, and miniature games are really hard to find and expensive. I read that somewhere, that Brazil has a very small miniature gaming market, and it's kind of difficult, and that's kind of a bummer. But I don't know what that is. I don't know if that's due to distributors or companies or anything along those lines, or what it is. But I'm glad that you're enjoying the videos. I appreciate that. Age of Sigmar is not post-apocalyptic, as we don't know how many times passed since the end times, and there is plenty of civilizations who rose at the same level than the old world. I guess. I don't know. I mean, if you look at the end times as being the apocalypse to some degree, and since this is happening after that, I mean, technically, it's post-apocalyptic. You know, it's semantics, I suppose, but I don't know. I just like to think of it as being post-apocalyptic because it seems, as I was just recently thinking to myself, most of the games I enjoy seem to be post-apocalyptic, so I figure I might as well lump this in there as well. Saga is fun. Yeah, I keep hearing about Saga, and there's a ton of people at Adepticon that were playing Saga. Well, I mean, relative terms, but still, they have a very good-sized tournament that happens there. I don't know anybody locally that plays. I know down in Milwaukee, I'm north of Milwaukee, about, I don't know, 100 miles or so. But I know down in Milwaukee, there's a decent amount of Saga players. So, I mean, that's pretty cool. I don't know much about the materials. Like, I don't know, are they metal models generally, or are they plastic, or does it depend on who you buy them from? I do know that it's not like one of those things where, like, hey, we make this game and we make all the models and you buy them from us. Because of historicals, most times you buy whatever models you want. As long as they're the right scale, you can kind of go from there. So I think that's kind of interesting. Let's see here. Let's see. Hi, Adam. First time on live. Your videos are great. What is the paint brand you use most? Thank you. The main two, I guess, would probably be Vallejo and Games Workshop. Games Workshop, the Citadel paints I like fine in most situations. I've not tried their airbrush ones, and I don't know that I ever will. For airbrush, it's pretty much Vallejo is what I use. A little bit of Scale 75, in that I bought a box of Scale 75 miniature paints 2 years ago at Adepticon. But for the most part, yeah. If I'm doing airbrush, it's pretty much going to be Vallejo. If I'm doing regular brushing, it's generally Games Workshop or some Vallejo. I do have some Reapers that I use. I bought washes from Army Builder, but I never bought any of their regular paints, so I don't know much about those. I was going to get some paints from Secret Weapon Miniatures this year at Adepticon, but then I just never got around to getting. I was in their booth like one time, and I didn't get in there much. They have a new line of acrylics, which are designed more for weathering. Like, he didn't just decide to make oh boom, I've got an entire line of acrylics. He put out a line of acrylics that's designed to be like a lot of rust colors and a lot of colors you would use in weathering, but not necessarily colors you would use to paint, like a knight in shining armor type of thing. It's it's more into weathering because that's what they do. He's got the weathering pigments that he sells. He's got now the weathering paints that he sells, the washes, all that kind of stuff. He's into that as opposed to being a full-blown paint line. But yeah. The old kit of the bell, you could build both ways. Oh, yeah, for Skaven, if you bought the normal kit, you could build it either as a plague furnace or as a screaming bell. But I don't know if they give you the sprues for both in these getting started or start collecting or whatever the heck they're called boxes. They generally only show one thing on the front, but yeah, I would be surprised if they would only give you one option, but I suppose it's possible. Let's see here. To buy a starter box of 40K, it is about 800 to 900 rays. I'm sorry, I don't. Oh, Brazil. Okay, gotcha. Our currency is about a quarter of the USD. And the minimum salary is about 800, so it's impossible to play miniatures games here. Oh, yeah, no, that's very expensive. And I'm wondering if that's because of multiple levels of middlemen or middle people. Like Games Workshop sells it to a distributor, who sells it to a distributor, who sells it to a distributor, and each of them needs to get their beak wet, and by the time it gets to you, the actual buyer, it's been marked up so much that it's just not possible. So yeah, no, that is a bummer. I don't know if there's any homegrown, like, local miniatures games in Brazil. That'd be interesting to see. Because really, especially when you start talking about metal, yeah, like these plastics, all these different injection molded plastics, they're expensive and hard. But metal models, people can make metal models honestly on their stove. You know what I mean? There's a lot of companies that are doing that, and it'd be interesting to know if there are any kind of like more indie Brazilian companies that are making models. Like I was talking a little bit about the Wreckage, which is that post-apocalyptic game. That game is made by a couple of guys I know in Chicago, and those are metal models, and they can get pretty low numbers, and they're not making them themselves, but they're paying a small company to produce the models that they need, and it works out pretty well that way. So yeah, that's interesting. All Start collecting boxes are standard sprues, so yes, you can do either models or magnetize them to get both. Okay, well that's cool. So then, yeah, if you were going to go with the Clan Pestilence starter box thing, you could either build the Screaming Bell or the Plague Furnace. I, being a Nurgle player, would definitely go Plague Furnace because it just makes more sense for me, because then the Screaming Bell doesn't have the Nurgle keyword, so it won't work out. The Collecting Pestilence box comes with a catapult as well? Really? I'll have to take a look at that, because that Plague Claw catapult is really cool. I like that thing a lot. I took the banner from the Death Black Knights and stuck it to the White King. Yeah, I'll have to look into that and see if it's a thing that if I need that, or if it's super helpful. I'll have to look at the War Scroll again. I was looking at it last night, and I forgot what the banner does for the White King, but that'd be kind of interesting. Let's see here. My goodness. Yeah, I wish this chat thing worked a little bit better. Greetings from Denmark. Hello. Let's see here. Considering the individual unit price, the start collecting boxes for Age of Sigmar look like they're more of a going out of business sale. Yeah, I don't think so. It takes a lot of money to make those new packaging and all the boxes and all that stuff, so I don't think that they're going out of business. I think they just want to get people, like it says on the box, to start collecting. So they're giving you, here's a good starter that saves you a little bit of money and gets you down that road. That's the way I think that they're really kind of looking to them. Matthias says it's due to distributors. This is the Brazilian thing. It's due to distributors and our 60% taxes on things that are imported. Yeah, that will definitely cause the prices to go way up. I can understand that. Let's see here. Hey Adam, I often find that I'm more attracted to painting fantasy models rather than sci-fi stuff. Which do you prefer? I feel as though I can be more creative with fantasy miniatures. I generally used to be more of a sci-fi guy, and but I have to admit that I do prefer to do stuff that's more like fantasy stuff, grungier, kind of that kind of thing, I prefer. It's one of the reasons I don't get into elves generally, is because elves are always, in the lore, are always very clean, you know, and they don't get dirty or grungy much, just for whatever reason. So that's why I have a tendency to be interested more in the stuff that can be kind of dirty. And I have to admit, it's one of the reasons why I'm not super into Infinity yet. I've got some friends that are starting to play, but everything is very brightly colored. Everything is very sci-fi, kind of anime almost, and it's just sort of, I don't know, it's not quite my thing. So lately I've become more and more interested in fantasy and a little bit less in sci-fi. I mean, I still love watching sci-fi movies and stuff like that, but, you know, I'm more interested in fantasy and post-apocalyptic, kind of grungier looking stuff. So let's see here. The Citadel airbrush paints are actually really nice in my experience. Oh, gee, then I just lost it. God. I cannot find Age of Sigmar. Greetings from Denmark. I remember that. Age of Sigmar. The Citadel airbrush paints are really nice in my experience. You've got to shift them, though, to a better bottle. Yeah, that's the biggest problem for me, is the fact that they come in the normal paint pots, but yet it's a really liquid paint that you have to try to get into the top cup on your, you know, on your airbrush. I don't understand why. I mean, I understand why they did it from, I guess, a financial thing, because they didn't want to go out and have to, you know, build a new bottle shape or whatever. But yeah, they should honestly come with like a little eyedropper, so you can, you know, otherwise you have to go buy your own and keep cleaning it out. It's a pain in the rear. So I don't know. It's not. I haven't tried them yet. I've watched a couple of reviews about the particular, you know, Citadel airbrush paints. It doesn't bother me. Like, I know there are people out there like, well, I got to have the same shade for this. I'm not that fancy, I guess, so I haven't gone that direction yet. Imperial Torches says, don't bother with the Citadel Air, just thin the usual colors if you need to. Yeah, and I've done that as well. I've taken some of that and mixed it with Golden, which is a brand name, airbrush medium. I've used that before. I know a lot of other people use sometimes Windex to thin it down. There's also, I want to say Vallejo makes an airbrush thinner, which you can also use. I think if you just use straight water, some people can get away with that. I've never had great luck with just using straight water. I've always had to thin it with something else. So let's see here. Ideal new Age of Sigmar faction. For me, an ideal new Age of Sigmar faction, and I've thought about this some, and it kind of goes back to the whole concept of the post-apocalyptic stuff. Because of the way that Age of Sigmar works, where the old world was destroyed and now there's these weird pockets of like floating, you know, like reality or whatever the deal is, if there are still humans, which there obviously, you know, kind of are, they should almost be like post-apocalyptic survivors. Like the free peoples shouldn't be looking like Bretonnians and Imperials anymore with very shiny armor, and they're all, you know, because it's been a really super long time, and they've been basically scraping along as chaos has been causing tons and tons of problems for everybody in all the different mortal realms. And I think that they should come out with new human models that are, you know, very ragtag, or at least, I mean, the foot soldiers, the regular troopers are more ragtag, but there should be definitely some of that going on. I think that'd be really interesting to come up with a new Free Peoples kind of thing. They could get really interesting with a lot of the models, and I think it'd be kind of cool. That's what I'd like to see, frankly. Otherwise, I don't know what else new stuff. I guess the elves could use some new stuff. New scary tree people and stuff like that. That'd be pretty cool. The only thing I hate about Games Workshop paints are the bottles. They are awful. Yeah, they dry out quite frequently, and I'm not a big fan myself. Try the Secret Weapon washes. They are pretty sweet. Armor Wash is awesome. I bought the Secret Weapon washes 3 years ago at Adepticon, or maybe 4. I've had them for quite a while. They're great. I really like them. They're not... Secret Weapon washes are nothing like Games Workshop washes. They are not nearly as thin. They are not designed to just wash over something to kind of give it a little bit extra detail like a GW wash is. They are more like a glaze. I actually talked to Justin, who owns the company. He's the, you know, Mr. Justin. And he said that originally they were thinking about calling them Secret Weapon glazes, but he thought that people wouldn't understand what glazes mean. So he would rather name them kind of what they aren't exactly, and then explain to people how to use them, as opposed to saying that they're glazes and then people go, oh, I don't like to use glazes, even though they really should. I've painted a bunch of models by airbrushing, you know, primer black, and then hitting the model from above with like a white, and then doing most of my color blocking with Secret Weapon washes, because like if you've seen any of the pictures of my Chaos Warriors, they have those green cloaks, and there's a nice fade from light green to dark green on the back, and it looks like I knew what I was doing as far as blending, but I don't. I just basically airbrushed from white to black, which is really pretty simple. I'm going to do a video about it in my airbrush series. And then I just threw a green wash over it, and it looks like it's faded from light green all the way down to dark green. And yeah, it's a pretty simple thing, and that's what those types of washes are really good for. But they're a lot thicker. There's a lot more pigment in them than there is in a GW wash. A GW wash is something you put on something to, you know, pump up the details in the crevices, but it shouldn't overpower the color that you've laid down underneath it. Secret Weapon washes, most of them are the color. They're just really transparent, but they're still going to cover stuff to some degree. So yeah. The Secret Weapon weathering acrylics look cool. Yeah, from what I understand, the Secret Weapon weathering acrylics are actually they're manufactured by Reaper. So, you know, it's not like something he's making in his own shop. He's basically having Reaper do the manufacturing and stuff like that to his specifications and using whatever. And I was talking to him a little bit about it, and he said that Reaper is one of his like favorite brands right now, which is why they're making his paints. So the airbrush GW paints are brutal. I started my Imperial Knight using Corn Red air paint, faffed around getting it into the airbrush, and sprayed it on. I then put on the other base coats and cleaned up. But it turns out that the Corn Red is a different color to normal Corn Red. See, that's my concern, is that if the red is a different color, even though they say, oh yeah, well this color is this and this, but it's still not quite the same. Yeah. Thinning paint is a punishment that you levy upon yourself. Just buy the air paint of your choice and rejoice in the copious amounts of saved time. I have to agree. That's one of the reasons why I love Vallejo Model Air and Vallejo Game Air, because I can just squirt it right out of the bottle into my airbrush and then start going to town, and I prefer that. So yeah, sitting there and trying to match up colors and go back and forth, or to thin out regular GW paints, I mean, those pigments are not... The pigments in miniature paint are much, much finer than the pigments in like craft paint you get at the craft store that's acrylic. But that being said, the pigments in airbrush paint, from what I understand, are generally even finer still, because they need to go through an airbrush and not clog things up too much. So, yeah. From what I can tell, the Start Collecting boxes are just the sprues from the individual boxes lumped together. Yeah, I got the feeling that was the case too, but I didn't want to tell people, oh yeah, you can definitely build, you know, the Plague Furnace or the Screaming Bell with that Clan Pestilence one, because it kind of wouldn't make sense to build the Screaming Bell for Clan Pestilence, because the Screaming Bell doesn't have the Nurgle keyword, so, you know what I mean? But I'm assuming it's probably cheaper for them to just throw the stuff in the box than it is to sit there and try to make sure, because if you ever looked at GW sprues, a lot of times, not always, but some situations, especially like with the new starter box for Age of Sigmar, where you've got those Khorne dudes and the Stormcast, every once in a while there'll be like a Stormcast bit way over on a different sprue, and you're like, well, I need that piece, but, you know, so that would be difficult. The worst was Isle of Blood, the starter for Fantasy, back in whatever edition it was, 7th, 8th. That one, like, if you want to, like, split it with a friend, it is really difficult to clip all the parts right, because they've got the parts mixed around on those sprues, like, just crazy. So, yeah. I got the Skeleton Horde kit, had the option to make all 3 riders. Same case with the Skull Cannon Blood Throne for the Demons of Khorne kit. Captain O'Rex, I appreciate that, because I want to get the Skeleton Horde kit eventually, and like I said, I don't want the Tomb King-y guy that they show in the box. I want one of the more vampire-y dudes that's inside. So I'm glad to hear that you can have the option to make any of those different riders. That's going to be very cool. So that will be one of the centerpieces probably for my Death Army once I get these guys all put together. GW paints are nice, but those pots are terrible. Yeah, everybody seems to think so the case, and I don't disagree. The oldest GW, like, I've got friends who've got really old GW paints in the really old pots, and they're still 20 years, they're still good. And then you've got, you know, you can buy a pot 3 years ago and it's dried out already. So yeah. Let's see here. Matching paint colors can be a real pain. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, Minotaur to GW, I don't even know how you would match those colors together. Minotaur is Badger's paint line, Badger airbrush. How do you think are the Slave to Darkness are generic dudes for Nurgle, Tzeentch, Slaanesh? In your opinion, it's fluff-wise to use warriors and rotbringers. Fluff-wise, I have no problem putting Chaos Warriors in with my my Nurgle army, because they can take the Nurgle keyword, like it says in there, in one of the rules for Chaos Warriors, you can choose to give them any one of the 4 keywords. So I just painted them with those green cloaks to kind of mimic sort of the green kind of Nurgle-y stuff. I was going to go in and do a bunch of green stuff and make some of them look almost like starting to get pussy and mutilated and stuff, and then I kind of ran out of time, so I didn't do that. But if I ever do another set of those guys, I might mix in some of them that have a little bit more mutation and a little bit more kind of Rotbringer look to them. That's a potential. But yeah, I have no problem. I think that it's, I mean, it just, in my mind, so you've got these like regular rank and file, like Chaos Troopers fighting for a Nurgle boss. They're just basically doing what they're told. And I have no problem with that from a fluff, standpoint. And as far as the rules are concerned, like I said, they can take the Nurgle keyword with no problem, so it's no big deal. Standard banner White King keeps your units alive. Very, very handy. A lot of the banner guys in the dead army allow your guys to pop back up again, I've noticed. So I'll have to check and see like what the specifics are. But yeah, if I need to put a banner on this guy, I'll figure out a way to do it. Oh, I just realized his shield has got like a crazy skeleton. I don't know if you can see this or not. It's got like a crazy like skeleton kind of spider sort of motif going on in his shield. That's sort of cool. It's got like a human skull, but like multiple spidery. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah, I'm looking forward to painting that guy quite a bit. There's a game on Kickstarter called Fields of Gore being made here in Brazil, but they match their prices to the rest of the market. See, that doesn't make any sense to me. If you're making them locally and you don't have to go through all that taxing and distributors, if you were to price it normally, or even a little bit more than normally, but not as expensive as, say, Games Workshop and stuff like that, I would think that you would sell more. But again, I'm no business guy. Standard. No, it's all. Yep. Fish people, absolutely fish people. I do love fish people. I almost wanted to go for a while with the lizard men because they're almost fish people, but they're not really fish people. Let's see here. Spooky skeletons, the best skeletons. Yeah, that's why I kind of like them better than the Tomb Kings ones. Let's see. What do you think of Forge World models? Especially the Dread Saurian. I have not really looked at much of the Forge World models for Age of Sigmar. I guess I should do a little bit more of that, but... Antonio says, I've just started playing AOS with my girlfriend, and I have to say that it's the game that we wanted. Easy to prepare, intuitive, and you can start playing with only 2 or 3 units. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've had a lot of people in the comments on the videos that I've done about this talking about how they're playing it with their kids, they're playing it with their wife, they're playing it with their girlfriend, they're playing with friends that they've never played with before, or they're just getting into the game now, they've never done miniatures before, and there's a lot of, that's why I really think they did all of this to bring new people into the hobby. And from what I see just in my comments alone, in a lot of situations it does work. A lot of people who were veterans and big into the tournament scene for fantasy obviously got angry about this and kind of, decided not to play and moved on to other things. But not all of them. There's a podcast that I like to listen to called Skull Bros Awesome, and they are based out of the Minneapolis area. And if you just look them up, Skull Bros Awesome online. And it's a great podcast. There is a lot of swearing, FYI. But they were always fantasy players, and they're big into hobby. So they talk a lot about paint techniques and this kind of stuff and whatever. But they're just a lot of fun to listen to. And when Age of Sigmar came out, they were kind of like, I don't know, I'm not sure. But this year at Adepticon, I ran into those guys, and they both played, both Rotor and Braska played in the one-day tournament for Age of Sigmar this year at Adepticon, and really enjoyed themselves because the missions were really super cool, and they did everything, and they just really enjoyed it, and they're getting a lot more into it now. So those guys were hardcore tournament players, played a lot, and they've really kind of gotten, they also did move into a little bit to Infinity and stuff like that, like a lot of fantasy players seem to, but they did, they really enjoy Age of Sigmar now as well, which I thought was kind of refreshing after you see all of the complaints and hate sometimes by more veteran people online. Let's see here. Let's see here. Seraphon. Yeah, the Seraphon. Those are the lizard men are now called Seraphon. That's true. Absolute Wargaming Starter. Is AOS great for that? Yeah, if you've never really been into Wargaming at all before, Age of Sigmar is a good start in my opinion. I mean, I guess maybe the best possible starter might, if you've never painted anything before, obviously X-Wing, Star Wars X-Wing is doing gangbusters business, both because of the Star Wars thing, but also because of the fact that you don't have to build or paint. At our local shop, a lot of the people who are playing X-Wing are people who also still play Magic, so they're card players predominantly, but then this came along, and they were like, wait, so I can buy these guys, they're already pre-painted, I just have to take them out of the box and start playing, and there's cards, and a lot of Magic players at my local shop have started switching over, not switching over, they're still playing Magic as well, but they're also playing the X-Wing. So, you know, if you're getting into miniatures just like as a concept, then yeah, X-Wing's a great gateway game to get you into it. But if you're also interested in getting into the hobby, starting to build, starting to paint, starting to glue little dudes to your fingers and stuff like that, then I would say Age of Sigmar is probably the way to go, frankly. Let's see here. I think GW sets should be priced like Flames of War. Tabletop Means did a video on it a while ago. Yeah, it is interesting to see how the way that a company like Battlefront that makes Flames of War, like generally when you buy 5 tanks, they are generally the same price, no matter what army they're for, no matter what era. Because that's the thing that's interesting about Flames of War for people who don't play, is that there's like early war, mid-war, and late war. Because, you know, the tanks that came out at the beginning of World War II were very different than the tanks that were built towards the end. And so it would be sort of unfair if one player showed up with a bunch of like early like 1936, 1937, 1938 tanks and then went up against a guy who brought a bunch of like M26 Pershings, which were, you know, incredibly powerful in comparison to the stuff that was built early on in the war. So that's why that they have these 3 different eras within World War II. And when you play, you guys, you know, you pick a point value or whatever, but you also have to pick which era you're going to play in. But no matter what, generally the tanks cost the same, whether you buy French tanks or German tanks or, you know, American tanks or British tanks. 5 tanks is $62.50 or whatever it is. And that's just the way it works. And yeah, GW doesn't really do that as much, which was part of that conversation that I had. Let's see here. Man, I'd start some Chaos if they'd resculpt those super old Chaos Warriors. You know, honestly, I don't mind the Chaos Warriors. One thing that I noticed, and I didn't do this enough until towards the end, but you know how the Chaos Warriors, if you've seen them always, they have that shield, and because they were always rank and file, and they were always had to be kind of tight together, they have the shield and they have the spear, well, not the spear, but like the sword. If you look in some of the stuff that GW is showing now for the new models and things like that, they take that same sword and they just like turn it and maybe like crank it out a little bit, and now it doesn't look like the guy is standing there so straight. He looks like he's kind of maybe even almost leaning forward, even though he's not. You just change the position of the sword and they look a lot better. The next group that I ever build of Chaos Warriors, I'm going to turn all their swords a bit, you know, so that it looks like they're a little bit more naturally, you know, stanced, if that's a word. But yeah, it would be nice if they would kind of maybe go and change that, but I don't know if that's necessarily a thing like that. Magnus says he recently cleaned up his attic and found 3 old Citadel pots, and they're still perfect. Yeah, the oldest ones, from what I understand, are still perfect. It might sound a little conspiracy theory-ish to say maybe they made the new paint pots like this so that you have to buy more paints because they have a tendency to dry out. I don't know if that's the case. It seems like a bad idea. Maybe it seems like a financial good idea, but it seems like a bad idea for your company. But I don't know. Maybe it's just cheaper for them to make the pots that way. I'm not sure. I don't like the fact that the new ones won't stay open, especially with the washes where you're kind of dipping in there and then you go to the, you know, putting wash on. The new washes, they just won't. You have to like try to hold it with one hand and then and that's really hard because then you're trying to paint on a miniature, and when do I get to hold the miniature? Yeah, I don't like the new, especially for washes. I don't like the new paint pots at all. Let's see here. What else have we got? The problem with X-Wing is that the way to play it is being so competitive that you can only play 2 or 3 strategies if you don't want to be at least annihilated in 3 turns. I guess I play with people who aren't super duper competitive sometimes. I mean, I play with some people who are very competitive and go to tournaments and things like that. Living in Wisconsin, we're not very far away from Minneapolis, which means that I know guys who will go to the what's known as Worlds, like the World Championships, because it's Fantasy Flight's based at, like I said, Minneapolis, which is maybe 5 hours away. So I know guys who've gone to that before, to Nationals or to Worlds, just because for whatever reason. And those guys are obviously very competitive, which makes sense. I get that. But, you know, generally I play against people who just want to have a good time. And so, you know, a lot of your experience in any kind of wargaming, whether it's Age of Sigmar, 40K, X-Wing, whatever, is very dependent upon the people that you play with. So yeah, if you just go into a shop and you see somebody there who's going to be playing, you know, some X-Wing, and you say, hey, you want to play? And it turns out that they're a tournament player and they go to tournaments all the time, they're probably going to crush you. But if you check with them and go, hey, you know, what kind of game do you want to play? They may want to just mess around or have a good time. They may want to try out some new strategy that they haven't tried before. You know what I mean? That could be cool. So, yeah, there's a lot of different options there as far as that goes. Let's see here. Do AOS Orcs. Wow. Oh, I see. So you're saying that the new Age of Sigmar orcs are kind of like the World of Warcraft orcs. Yeah, to some degree, I can kind of see that. I've seen some memes of people taking the Age of Sigmar orcs and just putting giant shoulder pads on them, like the ones in World of Warcraft. I can see that look kind of to some degree. Yeah, definitely. Although, to be honest, I would say that probably World of Warcraft probably took their orcs, well, Blizzard in general kind of took their orc design partially from Games Workshop. Let's see here. The GW posts have a tab on the back to hold them open. They did, but the washes don't seem to. And I don't know if it's just so that it doesn't dry out, or I don't know. But yeah, like the normal paints do have that little tab that you can kind of click it open and it stays, but I've found my washes don't. So that's a bummer, especially since I'm trying to go back in there with my brush all the time so I can use wash. Does anybody know if new edition of War Machine will come with new sculptures of the armies? I don't know that at all, and it seems as if it's one of those deals where they wouldn't necessarily do it. I mean, like, they're going to put out the new book, but if they came out with new sculpts, I mean, they may come out with some new sculpts of older figures, but, you know, especially as they're trying to transition more and more stuff to plastic. But I don't know if that's, I don't think it's certainly not all at the same time, probably. It's going to be one of those things that takes, you know, a certain amount of time over time. Do you think you'll go back to War Machine once the new edition comes out? I don't know that I want to spread myself that thin. I'll definitely take a look at it. You know, like I've got a couple of people, I've got friends online, obviously, that play it quite a bit, like, you know, Wargamer Girl and Codex Dan. So I'll be interested in checking it out, but I don't know that I'm going to particularly, you know, leap over and start playing it necessarily that way. A pal of mine mentioned you like a tabletop game that ran partly on app and partly on the tabletop. I've been doing some pre-release stuff for a game called Lands of Ruin. Feel free to check it out. Okay. The game that he was talking about was Golem Arcana. Golem Arcana was a pre-painted game, came in a box, but you played it also with like an iPad or a tablet or a phone or whatever, and it took care of a lot of the bookkeeping and the kind of stuff that you would have to kind of keep track of. They just recently announced that they're not going to be making it anymore, so it didn't last maybe 2 years, which is a bummer, because it was actually kind of a cool game, and it was really easy to teach at conventions. It was super easy to just drop down and show people, and they picked it up super quick. So yeah. James Moulton, Warcraft was originally supposed to be a war. Dropped frames detected. Your stream quality may be affected. Well, that's fun. What's going on? Hello? It says that I'm live. Can you guys see me? Anything? Hello? Is it back? Oh, good. Okay. I don't know what happened there. That was very strange. I would generally blame my cable company for that problem. All right, that's very interesting. Cool. All right. Let's see here. What else was the stuff that people were talking about? I did not cut my thumb off. It's right here. I got the other one right here, so I'm good. Use a small plastic piece like the tube from the brush to block the cap open when, yeah, no, like making a little, to keep the wash open, I should just make a little, I don't know, put a toothpick or something in there, hold it open, that'd be good. New GW washes with the big pots have the tabs. Faulty batch. I don't know, I guess I haven't bought a wash in a while, but so I'll have to double check on that. Would you showcase your Nurgle army or in a battle report? When I start doing Age of Sigmar battle reports, which will be pretty soon, I will definitely have my Nurgle army will definitely be in there because I'll be playing that way, so that'll be cool. Let's see here. James Moulton, my wife is laughing at me so hard right now. I don't know why. I hope that everything's okay. P break. Nope. Let's see here. Weird, I just went over to my paint station to look at some Agrax bought last week. It is one of the new bigger pots and has the tab. Maybe it's a thing with pots in the UK. That's also potential. And like I said, I haven't bought a new wash in a while, so I'll double check. Actually, I'm running low on one of the browns, either the sepia or the regular brown, so I'll probably have to buy a new one at my local shop soon, and then I'll see if it's got the new tab or not, because I honestly, like, keeping that thing open is really a pain in the rear. Early GW pots didn't have the tabs on. I pretty much bought all of them when they came out, and I've got a few without the tabs, annoyingly. Yeah. Picked up the Wrath of Kings 2-player box at Salute last week. Impressed so far, and relieved to have finished putting all the models together. Yeah, Wrath of Kings is also a pretty cool game. I wish that I had more people around here who played it, which is to say I wish I had any people around here who played it, but I do really like, I went House Hadros, which is basically the Fishman, as I've mentioned before, and I really like them. The models are amazingly easy to put together, and they're like the mold lines, because they're a little bit of a rustic, they're not plastic particularly, but I think it's maybe a little bit more plastic heavy rustic, if that makes any sense. And I do like the models quite a bit, and they do go together relatively well. Mold lines are not too bad, and like I said, I went with the Fishman, so I've got 12 Deepmen done. They just need to be put on bases now because I painted them on corks separately, because I bought fancy bases from Secret Weapon actually a couple years ago at Adepticon to put them on there. And then what else? But it's a cool game system, I think, too. I just wish that more people kind of played it around here. I was about to mention your comment when it crashed, so she started laughing at me. Oh, I see. Well, gotcha. Didn't lose you. Sound and feed great. Well, that's interesting. So some people lost me and some people didn't. Huh. Team Fish People. The Fish People is probably the better nomenclature, dude. I appreciate that. Tried Kingdom Death Monster yet? No, I've seen stuff about it, but I've never seen it anywhere. Like, is it only Kickstarter, Kingdom Death stuff? Can you buy it, like, in normal places? Because I've never seen it in a store anywhere either. I've just only heard about it on Kickstarter and stuff. All the washes I bought in the last 6 months have tabs. All right, I'll have to check on that. Because maybe that's what the deal is there. For the first few runs on the newer GW paint runs, the tabs seemed random. I've had some colors with and without tabs. Well, all right, then it's maybe not just me then. The Wrath of Kings bases are the worst, though. So what Twisted Bishop is talking about is that Wrath of Kings, the bases are like the normal kind of round-edged kind of bases, sort of like the ones you see in Malifaux or you see in War Machine, but they're deep. Like, instead of just being flat across the top and then the rounded edges, like here, they are like rounded edges, and then they drop in deep. I think it's interesting that you can use them for modeling. Like, you can just drop stuff in there to basically fix it, or you can make. I've done it with some of them where you can now like I'll put pieces of cork in there, but then you can actually have things kind of go deep, like they're like straddling a little bit of a stream, because you can do that, and you can get a little more three-dimensional with them. Some people will do stuff with a resin and in there to make it like a real clear liquid resin, so it looks like there's water standing and stuff like that. I think they're cool, but they do take a bit more work. What do you think about the Walking Dead game? I haven't. I mean, I know it exists. I saw the Kickstarter. I know that Mantic is on it, but I don't know anything about the rules or anything, and I haven't really even looked at the models much. So, I want to train at painting, and I'm hesitating between getting Skavens and Orcs. Not sure I'll play Age of Sigmar. What would you guys suggest as a small army? Probably Orcs over Skaven, because Skaven is not generally a small army, because like I said, like these 10 guys here are half of a box of guys, and I'm gonna need to get probably finish the other 20 or the other 10 and then probably buy another box at some point, because Skaven, you need a lot of them. So if you're looking for something you don't need as much of, between those two, Orcs are going to be the better choice, I think. Yeah, and Jared is backing me up on there. I mean, you can run a small Skaven army to some degree, but or you can mix some Skaven in with some other guys that are also chaos-based. That's fun too. That's basically what I'm doing to some degree. Let's see here. Yes, I said Goatman the other day and was reprimanded. It's best to say goat people, dude. It's true. Totally true. Got to be inclusive. Mantic bases are weird, but they are easy to glue together. Mantic bases. I don't know that I've... Well, no, I built Dead Zone, and they do have slightly weird bases. They're like not... They're not slanted on the edges like a GW base, and they're not rounded like a War Machine or Malifaux base. They're like straight. So that's kind of interesting. Melanie, totally forgot about this. Sorry, I didn't give a ton of. I just kind of decided last night that I should, or yesterday that I should do it. But yeah, you watch it. It's going to be on the, you know, it'll be up on YouTube in about another half hour once it's done processing or whatever. An army of Storm Fiends. All right, well, if you went with just straight Storm Fiends or Rat Ogres, yeah, you could build fewer models that way. That's true. Although I think it's hard to find Rat Ogres, aren't there? But if you run regular Clan Rats, that's a lot of models generally. You can always change the Wrath of King's bases to War Machine bases if you can't find the same. Yeah, that's... Well, like I said, I just bought resin bases from... it's a little bit more expensive, but I bought resin bases from Secret Weapon because I thought they looked really cool, and then you don't have to do a lot of texturing and all that stuff yourself. Kingdom Death from the Kingdom Death website only. Base game is currently sold out. Well, then I'm probably not going to be able to take a look at it much. James is asking, did you see that Age of Sigmar has a big announcement coming tomorrow? Any theories on what it could be? We did talk about that much earlier in the show. I have no idea what it's going to be. There's some people, obviously, that are thinking it's going to be a point system. People are thinking it's going to be... I think it's going to be maybe a campaign, kind of like a big summer campaign like they've done in the past with, like, 40K and stuff like that, where, like, I don't know, it'll be like a website and people will, you know, say, oh, this group won and this group won, and maybe they'll put it all together. I don't know. We'll see. I would like a big summer campaign. I think it'd be a lot of fun. Is it wrong to think of Skaven as a horde army still, when all armies can have infinite unit sizes? Yeah, I mean, since there's no points anymore, technically, if you want to run, you know, technically 10. I think 10 is maybe the minimum for Plague Monks, just as an example, because they're sitting over here. Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Let's see here. Unassembled, not unarmed. Unharmed. No minis were harmed. Well, this guy was cut off of sprue, and I scraped a bit, but that's about as far as I got. Just mainly with answering questions, which I'm fine with. I like talking to people, certainly. Would you ever consider changing out of the GW paint pots to another container to make them last longer? That seems like a lot of work. I've heard of people doing that, but it does seem like a lot of work. I mean, honestly, in that situation, I would probably just end up going with a different paint manufacturer. Like, I love the GW washes, so I'm going to always buy those. And actually, I prefer my washes, like most of my paints, I prefer to be in squeeze bottles because then I can just squeeze a little bit onto my wet palette. But with washes, I prefer them to be in a pot. Like, every once in a while, I'll buy a wash that comes in a squeeze bottle, and I'm like, well, so I have to waste some by putting it like someplace, and it just seems like a pain in the rear. So I prefer my washes to be in a pot, frankly, but I prefer every other paint to be in a squeeze bottle. So let's see here. I'm still surprised. In the spirit of the new Isle of Blood molds, GW still uses the old Rat Ogre Sword Masters molds instead of switching over to the plastic ones. I'm not sure what that means. I mean, I'm familiar with Isle of Blood. I don't know what that means. Let's see. What do you think of Mark III for War Machine? It'll be interesting to see what they do with it, frankly. I don't know what War Machine's gonna, what kind of changes they're gonna make. I've heard some people talk about how they're gonna streamline some stuff. I've heard people talk about how they're gonna, I don't know. There's a lot of different possibilities. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what they do. I know the game is very combo heavy, obviously, and it's very competitive. So I don't know. I mean, I think if they change things very drastically, I think that they would probably run the risk of ticking off a whole bunch of people, but we'll see how it goes. Can't remember where I heard about that, but there was an event in England where GW went, and they usually don't. And it might have been that would be the South Coast GT. Yeah, the South Coast Grand Tournament put on by the Heel and Hammer podcast. Games Workshop attended this independently run tournament, and they were like live blogging from there and stuff. So yeah, it's interesting how they are getting back into doing that stuff as they're getting back into social media, and they're getting back into asking people questions and things like that. It's very interesting to see. Generation Fisk, I just received a box of Astra Militarium Cadian Defense Force. What is your opinion and thoughts about the Astra Militarium? First of all, I like to call them the Imperial Guard, because I'm old school, I guess. I think they're great models to paint. I've never really played them. I've played against them sometimes, but I've never really played them, so I don't know a ton about like how they play. I know that you do generally need a lot of them, you know. They're kind of more of a horde army, not as much as, say, like, what do you call them, the Tyranids or anything like that. But changing pots is a pain, but worth it in the long run. I transferred all the Citadel air paints into dripper bottles, and it's made my life a lot easier. I would think that moving the Citadel air paints to a dripper bottle would be a lot easier because they're so fluid, but the normal, like, regular kind of thicker GW paints I think would be very difficult to do that with. Let's see here. I've always used dry palettes, but being in Aussie I'm thinking of using your wet palette from your vid. The paints dry very quickly on the palette here. That's one of the reasons why I switched to wet palette. I'm so much happier. Anyone who's watching this video who has not watched my wet palette video, you should really watch it after you're done here. It will change the way you paint. Wet palette is the way to go, hands down. It's great. So watch the wet palette video because wet palette makes things so much easier. Let's see here. The new orcs are awesome. There's a tournament in Oklahoma called Slobknocker, I think. That's interesting. I might actually get a small army of orcs. I've never been interested in them previously. They are pretty cool looking sculpts, I think. The new ones, definitely, specifically. Thinking about buying the new Ardboys. Yeah, a lot of those new models I think are really cool. I'll build a Snakebite army for 40k with those orcs. Well, that'd be interesting. You'd have to put like guns on them and stuff like that, but they'd be kind of cool looking. That's the thing, is they're nearly like interchangeable, the GW orcs for 40k or for Age of Sigmar. The Imperial Guard army is nice because you can make an entire army out of just tanks. Yeah, I just saw some guys at my local shop recently. It was like 9 or 10 Imperial Guard tanks versus 5 Imperial Knights. There was like not a troop on the table, and they were both evidently legal armies. And I was like, okay, that's cool. Blood for the Blood God paint is basically a watery corn red with water effect when it dries. It does pretty well, and even better if you can get them to do drips. Yeah, it's got like a definite gloss coat in it, and it's designed to be like a final touch. Like even after you've dull coated and stuff, then you do the Blood for the Blood God stuff. 521 Wallace is currently using his wet palette, or hers, I guess, I don't know. But that's good. Yeah, wet palette's the way to go. I really think that's the case. All that brown leather and fur was kind of boring before, but now they may just switch to orcs from the Chaos. I know a lot of people don't dig like the yellow paint jobs, but again, you can paint them whatever color you want. My Wi-Fi is being crappy in this new house. Well, yeah, normally my computer's on Wi-Fi here, but when I do these shows, I actually run a big blue cable to the router in the other room. I went online and bought a 50-foot cable so that I'm actually hardwired, because otherwise, yeah, I don't trust my Wi-Fi in this house either. So, that being said, it is 11 a.m. where I am, and this has been 2 hours, and these are going to generally go 2 hours when I'm doing them. So I've got to go. Actually, my stomach is grumbling, and I do have lunch with my parents, my in-laws, my wife's parents. We always go to lunch on Sundays over at their house, and so we'll be doing that soon. But I appreciate everybody who comes in and asks questions and stuff like that. I'm a little bit further ahead than I was last time in that I cut these parts off, but I did not get much further than that. So I think that's going to be kind of generally the way it works. I'm going to answer a lot more questions than I am going to actually get work done, but that's fine. I have no problem doing it. I like talking to people and working with just talking to all kinds of different people. I like engaging with the community, as it were. So thanks again. I like to see this, and I'm going to try to be doing this more frequently. Like, my plan is eventually to do these Sunday shows every other Sunday morning. Eventually, I'm also going to be able to try to move my computer down into the basement, but I need to get an electrician in, and I need to do a couple other things, and so it may be still here in the dining room for a while until I get all that figured out, but I want to start doing that, so. But anyway, so, all right, cool. I appreciate it, and I'm going to try and figure out how to turn this off, and thanks for watching.